Hello there, I'm Lucas from Web Dev Starters. Welcome to the first video on this channel. Today we're going to create this amazing responsive navigation bar only using some basic HTML, CSS and JavaScript. For that project, we're going to use Visual Studio Code, which is a free source code editor made by Microsoft. I'll leave a link down below where you can navigate to download this editor for free if you want to, but it should also work with any other editor as well. One last thing before we dive right into it. If you liked today's video, make sure to hit that little thumbs up button below that video that hard that it turns blue, cause the YouTube algorithm really loves that move. And now, without any further ado, let's get started. First, you have to create a folder on your computer for this project. FYI, it doesn't matter where you place it or how you name it. Then open Visual Studio Code. Click on File, Add Folder to Workspace, choose the right folder and click on Add. Now if we go inside here, we're going to see our folder right here. If we click on that icon over here, we can create a new file. We're going to call it index.html. Now we type an exclamation mark and press enter to get the basic HTML form. Afterwards, we're going to change this to navigation for our project, and we're going down into the body part. One thing I want to mention before we continue, normally you decide how you want your navigation to look like before you start programming. It is always helpful to keep in mind how the result should look like, and it will make the whole process much easier. The navigation bar that we're going to build today is going to look like this. The only thing we have to keep in mind for the beginning is that we're going to place our logo on the left side, or navigation links on the right side, and that it also is going to be responsive, so there are also going to be a mobile navigation. So let's get back to the code. Let's start with creating a nav element. Inside this, we built a div class named navLogo. Instead of creating a div class like this, you could also use a shorter version, which would be just a point and the class name, navLogo. Press enter. There you go. I also have another helpful tip for you. For most HTML elements, it is sufficient to start typing the first letter of your HTML element and choose from the suggestions that appear below. For example, if you need to create a table, just type a T, choose table, and you get an opening and a closing tag just like that. Let's continue. Inside the div class, we're going to create an A element to define a hyperlink. What we want to do here is we want to link our logo to the top part of our homepage, so that if we're, for example, on the About Me page or any other page of this website and we want to go back to the homepage, we just have to click on the logo. The only thing we have to do to make this work is we have to fill in a rhombus into the opening tag here. Then we have to put an image tag inside this A tag, because this is where our logo is going. IMG, short for image. So the SRC here stands for source, and we have to put the file path inside, file path of a logo inside this quotes. Depending on where your logo file is located on your PC, this might look a little bit different on your screen, but it is super simple. You just have to type // and choose from the drop-down. In my case, the logo is in my image folder. There it is. Click on it. That's all you have to do. The alt here stands for alternate text. In other words, you can put alternative informations inside the quotes here, and if the image tag cannot be displayed, it will show the text. It's not really necessary for our little project right here, but normally you would type in something like logo of Lucas, something like this in here. So that is everything we need for our navigation logo so far. Now we can start with the HTML code for the navigation links. For that, we have to create a UL element below this div class, but still inside the nav element. So, FYI, UL stands for undefined list. We're going to use a class for this as well. We will call it nav links. So we say ul dot links, press enter. Inside this ul element, we have to create li element. Li is short for list item. And inside this, we need an a element. Perfect. Before we do anything else, we duplicate this line 6 times because this is how much navigation links we want to have for this project. The shortcut in VS Code for duplicate a line is Shift, Alt, and down. So 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Right here between the opening and the closing tag, we can put in the names we want to call our navigation links. So for this project, we're just call them home, about, services, skills, projects, and contact. Perfect. Right here between the quotes of the href attribute, we could link the navigation points to the related pages. Since we're not going to create more sites which we could link here, we're just going to leave this empty. I think now is a good time to take a look on what we have created so far. For that, we need to go to the extension section. It's the 5th icon on the left here. Then we search for live server. There it is, and we install it. The install button should be right here. You cannot see it on my screen because I already installed it. After that, we can close this tab again. And if we click right on our mouse, we see the option open with live server right here. But before we have to save our work. For that we can move over here and click save or use the shortcut. So now we can open with live server. There it is. Don't worry, this will look much better in just a few minutes because now we're going to start with the CSS part. To begin with, we are going to create a new file again, our so-called CSS style sheet. So we'll click on the icon. We're going to name it style.css. Next, we have to link our style sheet to the index.html. For that, we have to go back to the HTML part. We have to add the following line into this head element. Let's put it right below the line with the title. We just have to type link, press enter, and put the path to our CSS file inside the quotes of the href right here. So as we already heard about just a few minutes ago, to fill in the path, you just have to type dot slash and choose from the drop down below. There it is. Perfect. FYI, the rel attribute here stands for related, and it specifies the relationship between the current and the linked document. Now we're going to save our index.html and go back to our CSS style sheet. It is important to know that browsers apply default styling on many HTML elements. The intent behind this idea is to provide basic readability for unstyled pages. However, you definitely want to override this default styling, and you can do it just like that. Asterisk, left curly brace, margin 0, padding 0 as well, and box sizing border box Perfect. For those of you who have not worked with CSS a lot by now, I will shortly explain the syntax. So this is the selector. Here normally put in the name of one or more HTML elements you want to style with the CSS rule. FYI, the asterisk here selects all elements. Then this is the declaration block, surrounded by the curly braces. In this case, the declaration block consists of three declarations. One, two, and three. Um, each declaration consists of a property and a value, separated by a colon and ending with a semicolon. So I think that should be enough. Let's get back and start with the nav element. We're going to say nav display flex so that it will be displayed next to each other. Then justify content um, justify content space between, and this will add space between the logo and the navigation links. And next we're going to say align items center, which gonna center it vertically. So the next step would be to find a font for our navigation. Now if we type font family right here, we could choose a common font from the drop down here below, but we want something fancier. And for that we're navigating to fonts.google.com. Here, google.com. FYI, Google Fonts is a library of over 1,000 free licensed font families. For this project, we're going to use the font Ubuntu. Yeah, this one here. More precisely, we're going to use the medium 500. Yeah. Click on select the style. Then we need add import. And then we copy this link without the style opening and closing tag. Just what's inside. So copy that and go back and paste it at the top of our CSS style sheet, just like that. Now, if we want to use this font, for example, for a navigation bar, for a nav element, we just have to type font family, and then we have to say Ubuntu, sans serif. That's it. So what we also want to do right away is we want to add a height to the navigation bar. We're doing that by adding a min height of 7.5 ph, and we want the background color, oh sorry, to be black, and we need a padding of 0 and 10%, so that there is some spacing between the elements and the edges. This first value is for top and bottom, and the second in this case is for left and right. So before we continue, I'm going to split my screen so that you see the changes that we make right away. So perfect. Let's make it smaller. Yeah. So next we're going to add a CSS rule to the image tag inside the div class nav logo. If we want to use a class as a selector, we first have to put a point. So first type a point, and then the class name. So we say dot nav minus logo img, just like that. Now we want to make the logo here a little bit smaller. So we're going to say width 200 pixels, vertical align, middle. Perfect. After that, we want to add a CSS rule to the UL class nav links. So here we say dot nav minus links. We say display flex. Perfect. Now they are beside each other because of the Flexbox here. And we also want to add some CSS code to the list items. So .nav minus links li. We're going to use list style none here to remove the bullet points. What we want to do next is we want to change the color of the navigation links here. For that, we want to select all the 8 tags inside the div class nav links. So we say .nav links li like this, and we say color white. So, save. Perfect. To remove the underlines, we have to add text decoration none. Perfect. And I would also recommend a letter spacing of 2 pixels, as well as a font size of 15.5 pixels. And we'll also add a margin left of 50 pixel. So this is the space between the navigation links. I'm gonna click on save now. You see what I mean, like this. What we also want to do right away is to add a hover to the navigation points. So we say the nav minus links lia hover, and we want to, for that we want to use the color crimson because I also use that color for my logo. Click save. Perfect. So now to make this hover look even cooler, we're now going to add some code to the CSS rule above right here. We're going to say transition color 0.5 seconds is safe. Perfect. That's right. Now you not just see, it's not just turning red. No, it's smoothly turning red. So before we start creating the mobile navigation, we want to make sure that the navigation bar looks good on every device. For this task, we have to change to the browser and open the console through clicking F12. Somewhere rather in the lower right corner, we have this little icon right here. And now we are able to change the width of the display and check out how it looks, for example, on an iPad or an iPhone or whatever. What we see while we enlarge the display is that we would need at least a width of 992 pixels, and we would have to set the margin left to like 20 pixels or something to reduce the space here to be able to display our navigation links, all of them probably side by side. So summing up, we now want to make sure that every device which has a smaller display width than 992 pixels has the mobile navigation because there's not enough space. And from 993 to 1200, um, this should be a great breakpoint. We want to have a margin left of 20 pixels, and from 1200 to 1400, we want 35 pixels margin left. And for every device which is bigger than that, which has a higher width, it will again be displayed with the width of 50 pixels that we declared just a few minutes ago. Now that we know that, let us start to add the code. I'm going to give this section a heading in form of a comment. Let's say responsive media queries. And I would recommend you to place this part always pretty much at the bottom end of your CSS style sheet. So let's start with the smaller devices, because we need to create the HTML part for a mobile navigation before the CSS part, but you don't actually have to, but it would be better. We're going to start now with the devices which has a display width between 993 pixels and 1200 pixels. For that size, we want the navigation links to be displayed, but we want the margin left, we want to change the margin left to 20 pixels. So we say add media, only screen, screen, and min width 993 pixels, and 190 pixels. The nav links and IA, and here inside this we can change it the margin left to 20 pixel. Perfect. Now we can mark and duplicate this media rule. Quick reminder, the shortcut for that is Shift Alt and down. So then change the min width to 1200 pixels, the max width to 1400 pixels, and the margin left to 35 pixels. And after that, we can save and check our work in the browser. As you can see, every time the width of the screen gets bigger, the navigation links become more space between. Perfect. So it works perfectly. So what we want to do next is we want to create the mobile navigation. For that, we first have to go to the HTML file, and there we're going to create a classic burger icon. One thing I want to mention before we continue, the way I am doing some of the parts in this project is not the only. Often there are multiple ways to get the same results. For example, you could use Font Awesome here for your icons, but for this tutorial we are going to create the icons in a different way. Basically, I just want to remind you to keep that in mind when you watch YouTube tutorials. There are almost always more ways than one. So let's continue. We place the code for the mobile navigation below the closing tag of the UL element, but make sure to stay inside the nav element. Going on, we have to create a div class called nav mobile. Click enter, and inside this div class we have to create another class called line1. And because a burger menu has 3 stripes, we need to duplicate the line to get 3. Now we rename this to line 2, line 3. Then we have to save the HTML file and go back to the CSS style sheet. Since the burger icon is just for the mobile navigation, we're first going to hide it. So we say .nav mobile display none. Then we want to style all the 3 divs inside the nav mobile inside the div class nav mobile. Therefore, we say dot nav mobile div. We want to add a width of 25 pixels, a height of 2.5 pixels. Then we want the backgrounds colored, and this should be exact the same color as you used for the navigation links. So for this project, it's going to be white. And finally, we have to add a margin of 5 pixels so that there is a spacing between the lines of the program. So next, we're going to the responsive media queries section again. We copy one of those media rules and paste it above it, just like that. Then we change the max width to 992 pixels and remove the min width. So first we want to select the div class navlinks. So we're not going to use that for now. And we also want to remove the declaration here. Now we want to create a mobile navigation with a black background, covering the whole display with the navigation links among each other. The navigation link should slide in from the right here. For that, we add the position absolute so that we can place this navigation exactly where we want it. Therefore, we're going to use right 0 pixels and top 7.5 VH because the navigation should start right under our normal navigation bar, which has a height of 7.5 VH. So to get 100 VH, which would be the full height, because we want to cover the full height, we would need to also add here a height of 92.5 VH. Perfect. Like I already said, we want a black background for this. So background color black. Perfect. And a width of 100%. And then display flex. We want to have a flexbox here, but with a flex direction column, so that it is arranged below each other. And we want the navigation points to be centered, so we add align items center. Perfect. So let's save and take a short look. As you can see, we're not finished yet. What we're going to do next is we want to add some space between the navigation points and also make sure that they are placed somewhere here in the center. And of course, remove the margin left here so that they are really centered, because they are not really centered right now. So let's use justify content, space between, a padding of, let's say, 10, yeah, 30 VH, also 0. That means this is the top padding. Second value is right. Then we have 30 is the bottom and 0 is here. It is placed somewhere here then. And we also need to add another CSS rule here. We have to say nav links LIA, and we say margin left 0 pixels. So let's save and take a look again. Perfect. Next, we want to hide this mobile navigation menu and just want it to appear if we click on the burger icon. For that, we need to add right here below the padding of the class navlinks, we need to add transform. It's not showing. Transform, perfect. Translate 100%. With this function, you can translate an element along the x-axis. So we use it to transform our full screen navigation 100% to the right. So let's save this. As you can see, it's now, the navigation is now over here. We could also do this with the transform, without the transform property. For example, we could change the right here to -100%, so it'd be -100% on the right, but let's use this version. So now we want to remove this scroll bar down here. To remove the scroll bar, we add the top here, body, overflow x, and hidden. Save and perfect. What we want to do next is we want the burger navigation menu to be displayed on devices with a width smaller than 992 pixels. So we go inside here. At the bottom we say nav mobile display lock. So like this. And perfect, there it is. Now what we could also add here is a cursor pointer. Looks great, but don't forget that we want this burger icon just to be displayed on smaller devices, which were mostly used without a mouse, so this isn't really necessary. You will recognize it later on while working on bigger projects, that it is really important to write a clean code and to avoid code parts that you don't really need. However, we're going to keep it for this project now. Now there's just one thing left we want to do before we start with the JavaScript part. As I already said before, later on when we click on that burger icon, we want the navigation to slide in from the right. And I will explain it now as simple as possible how we're going to do this, and for that I will also repeat a few things. So this line here, make sure that the navigation is moved 100% to the right. The overflow here, make sure that we're not able to scroll to the right side, so there is no scroll bar until we can't see the navigation. Now we add .nav active transform translate 0% right here. That means if we now use JavaScript to declare that the class navMobile gets the class of navActive when we're clicking on the burger icon, then this declaration will kind of override this one over here, and the mobile navigation will be visible. So we're going to leave the CSS part like this for now and start with JavaScript. You will see later on what I meant with what I'm saying right now. Therefore, we create a new file and call it animation.js. FYI, this is not how you have to name your file. I just chose the name right now. You could also name it app.js or mobile.js or whatever. Then we have to go back to the HTML and link our JavaScript file. For that, we go all the way down to the end of the body part, right here. But important, still inside the body part. Um, then we add scripts and pick the suggestion below. Inside the quotes, we have to link the JS file. For that, we say dot slash and just pick the right one from the drop down, animation.js. Perfect. Save and go back to the JavaScript file again. We start with creating an arrow function. So we say const, let's call it nav slide. FYI, an arrow function allows us to write shorter function syntax. This means before ES6 you would have to write this part here like to write it like nav slide um, so you would have to write it like that, and as you can see it's not that much of a difference, but it is a little bit shorter. So we're going to use the arrow function here. Inside the curly braces, we're going to declare our variables. FYI, variables that are defined within functions are called local variables. And they only can be used within the function that defined them. So we continue with const nav mobile equals document dot query selector nav mobile. So obviously we want to link here to the div class nav mobile. Nav mobile right here is the name I gave the variable. And const, well, there are two very important keywords, let and const. They are basically used both for functions. There's just one difference between those two variables that are defined with const. Cannot be reassigned. Variables that are defined with let can. So we use const here to make sure that whenever we're going to use this variable in this function inside here, that this will always be the declaration of it. So next we can say const navbar equals document dot query selector dot nav links. So we just created another variable that we're going to need later. And we also need another one. We create this also right away. It would be nav links equals document dot query selector. And here we need query selector all and dot nav li. Perfect. So for this one, we used all because if we use document.query selector, it will only return the first element within the document that matches the specified selector. But since we have 6 list items, we'll go back to this one. You see inside nav links, we're having 6 list items. And we want to select all of them, so we need query selector all. Perfect. Now we declared our variables. So here we have to also use const. Now we want nav mobile here to get the class of nav active when we click on the navigation icon. For that, we say, and make sure to stay inside this function. For that, we say nav mobile dot add event listener. This is the method we're going to use. Um, click. So on click. Uh, sorry, something on here. Whoop, like this. On click, we want to run a function. So arrow function, and now the function that should be executed is nav bar dot nav bar should get a class list. FYI, class list property is useful to add, remove, and toggle CSS classes on an element. And for this case, we're going to use the method toggle. So we say navbar.classlist.toggle, and we want to toggle the class of nav nav active. Always make sure you don't forget the semicolons. Now, as we all know, the code inside a function is not executed when the function is defined. No, it is executed um, when the function is invoked. So we now have to invoke this function. For that, we add the following line at the very end of our file. So we write at the bottom here. We say nav slide. That's the name we gave this function. Slide. Sorry. And that's it. Perfect. Now we can take a look. As you can see, yeah, um, it's working. But the navigation does not slide in. It's just popping out, popping out. Now we're going to change that in the CSS part. Since the slide in navigation is just for smaller devices, with a max width of 992 pixels, we have to add the code right inside here. And we say transition right here. FYI, transitions enable you to define the transition between two states of an element. So in this case, we're talking about the navigation, and the states hidden and visible. And with this property, we can define what happens between these two states. We are going to add transform 0.5 seconds ease. We're using the time function, and ease because it makes the change happens slowly both at the end and the beginning, and just speeds up only in the middle. So this will make it look smooth. Let's save and check that out. Perfect. Looks smooth. Um, Now this is so customizable. For example, you could also change the delay here to 0.8 seconds, for example. So it would slide a little bit slower. Yeah, or you could change here to ease in and out, or whatever you want to slide to look like. So it really looks pretty nice, but there is still things left we want additionally. For example, we want the navigation links to appear one by one, shortly after the navigation screen slided in. For this, we first have to say, go all the way down to the bottom here, we first have to say dot nav minus links li opacity 0. So as you can see, now we can't see the nav points anymore. Then we have to use the CSS rule keyframes, because with keyframes we can control the intermediate steps in our animation sequence by defining styles for keyframes along the animation sequence. So this is like saying on this point it should look like that. So start with that below, start with that below here. We say add keyframes, and we're going to name it nav link, oh sorry, fade, nav link fade, from and to. Perfect. So we want we fill in the rule, and we want to change the opacity from 0 to 1. So we say opacity from 0 to opacity 1. Perfect. Then save, and we go back to the JavaScript file. At the bottom, and that is very important, still inside the event listener, because the animation we're creating right now has to be executed uh, also just when someone clicks on the navigation burger icon. So, and we add nav links for each link. That means for each link, arrow function and the semicolons at the ends, like this, semicolons at the end. Now we have to add a second parameter beside link. We add index. This will bring back how many links we have. Now inside these curly braces here, we're going to run the actual function for the animation. We are adding link dot style dot, I'm sorry, dot animation is equal to, now we have to use backticks here. FYI, strings are always declared with single quotes or with double quotes, unless you need to build a string. Then you should only use string templating with backticks. So between the backticks, we add nav link fade, which is the name we gave this animation just a minute ago in the CSS style sheet. Now we're adding 0.5 seconds, which is the duration. Then is, we already know that one. Then forwards, and I will explain that in just a second. We're going to say index divided by 7, and then as for seconds. What we also want to add here is initial delay of 0.4. Perfect, it's a basic delay. So now I'll explain this to you in detail. Everything inside and including the backticks is called a template string. This here is a placeholder. The expression inside this is evaluated during the runtime, and the result is inserted into this string here. The S after the placeholder here just adds the information that the numbers inside the curly braces are seconds. So the S stands for second. So we're going to save that and check it out in our browser. So save that, check it right here. As you can see, nicely displayed one after each other. As you can see, it works, but just once. So we need to add a little bit more code here. We have to copy this line we just wrote, whole line, inside an if function. So let's cut that out, and we will add if link dot style animation equals so back here, else, and then we're paste a line inside the else brackets, right inside here. Perfect. So summing up, this means if our links have animation on it, so this is the condition inside the braces here. This is the condition. If our links to animation have animation on it, then the code in here is going to be executed. If this is not true, else this is going to be executed. Perfect. So let's save this and take a look on it. And everything seems perfect so far. I guess the last thing we have to do before we're finished now is we want to transform this burger icon into an X when we click it. So it should transform to something. And because X just needs 2 lines and we have 3 here, we're going to do something else with the third line. We're going to figure out something for that. Let's go into the CSS part again. At the very bottom, we start by creating the class close nav. And we also need the div class line1 here. And line1. Now we're going to duplicate this line 3 times. Explain to you in a second why. So, and we change names here to 2 and to 3. So, why? Because now we can create a rule set for every line. So that means that we can move every line on its own. That is important because we have every line has to do something different to get the X and the third to fly out or something. So let's say that top the top and the bottom line should form the X, and it would be nice if the line number 2 disappears disappears and slides in again when the navigation gets closed again. So let's start with line 2. We're going to use a declaration here that we already used today. So we say transform translate x 1000, sorry, no, translate 1000%, and we say transition transform 0.2 seconds is. So this will move the line to 1000% to the right on the x-axis. So it will move line 2 to the right and out of the viewing area. Let's just save and jump to the JavaScript part for now. And after we added the JavaScript, we can look we can check out the transform in the browser. So the line we're going to add right now is going to be almost exactly the same like that one here, but we have to change the class names. So we want the div class navMobile become the class nav close nav, which is the class that we created just 1 minute ago in CSS. So we have to stay inside the event listener. So right here, so we add nav mobile, I'm sorry, nav class list, dot toggle, just like above, and here we need close nav. Perfect. Save, and let's see what we have got so far. Perfect. The only thing we still have to do now is to transform line 1 and line 3 to make an X. For this we have to change to the CSS part again. We use transform here as well, but now we're going to rotate the line by -45 degrees. So we say transform rotate by -45 degrees. Save it and take a look. Perfect. Then we do almost the same with the CSS rule for line 3. So we say transform rotate, but instead of -45, we just need 45. So no minus. Save this and take a look. Okay. Now we have to place them nicely so that they build an X. And we're going to do that by adding translate. We say -5 pixels here and 6 pixels here. Take a short look. Perfect. And we're doing almost the same for line 3, but instead of 6px we need a -6px. So we say translate -5 pixels and -6 pixels. Take a look. Perfect. A perfect cross. One last thing, to make this transformation look smooth, we go up to nav mobile div, which should be, yeah, right here, and add transition all 0.2 seconds ease. Let's take a look what this changes. Perfect. Now it looks really smooth. This is definitely a beautiful and responsive navigation bar, I think. Perfect. So that's it for today. Thanks for watching and sticking with me till the end. Once again, make sure to hit the thumbs up button below that video, and of course subscribe if you want to see more videos like that. Also, if you want to, I would really appreciate if you could leave me a comment down below telling me your thoughts on this video. As it is my first video, I would really appreciate your input. However, dream big and get better every day. I'll see you guys next time.